Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and thank you so much for joining me. I absolutely love recording these podcasts, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to them as well. And if you do, please remember to subscribe down below and write a review. I absolutely love reading your reviews because not only do they bring me just such joy getting to hear from you guys and what you think about the podcast, I also take a lot of recommendations about what to talk about next through those reviews. So if you have an idea that you want me to talk about, or you have a question that you would like answered, then write it in the review down below. If I get enough questions, maybe a segment will become a question and answer period on this podcast, because I would absolutely love to talk to you guys more and to continue the conversation. So if you're also interested in talking to me just one-on-one, please reach out through social media. The GSMC Marketing Podcast has Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So definitely go check those out, because I'm always over there and I'm always talking and responding to you guys through social media. On today's episode, I've talked a lot in past episodes about how it's so important for you to have a marketing plan. On last week's episode, we actually talked about the biggest mistakes you might be making in your marketing, and one of them is not having a plan. And what I realized is, although I talk a lot about how it's important to have a plan, I've never talked about what you need to do to actually make the plan. Like, is the plan just a bullet point list? Is the plan a full PowerPoint presentation? Does the plan have to be online? Does it have to be printed out? Like, what is it and how do I get it? So on today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can make a plan. I'm going to talk you through the actual data collection. We're going to talk about the execution. We're going to talk about testing. We're going to talk about correcting. All of that and more on the GSMC Marketing Podcast. So make sure you stay tuned for that. To start out today's podcast, though, let's talk about what is new and what is happening in the marketing world. Our first story of today is that Formula One has said Tata to Tata. All right, guys, I'm so sorry I made a pun. I know. Boo on me, but I couldn't resist. I'd never heard of Tata before this story, but my roommate who went to Formula One informed me that they were really a big marketing partner at Formula One, so it's very interesting to see that the two are parting ways with each other. It's interesting to also note that the partnership has come to an end, mostly due to Tata just being done with Formula One. They feel as though they have reached the end of their partnership and that they don't see a future there anymore. Tata's Vice President of Marketing, Amit Roy, said, "We have decided to bring to a close our marketing partnership with F1. As we had achieved what we set out to do, we feel it's the right time for us to conclude this marketing partnership." As for F1 as a whole, Tata has also sponsorship deals with individual teams such as Mercedes and Williams, so I do not think that this will be the last we see from Tata at the F1 races. However, it is interesting to see that they are parting ways with Formula One, but not with these individual partners. They had this to say about that. "While our marketing partnership concluded on December 31st of 2019, we continue working with many of our F1 customers and partners behind the scenes for now." So it'll be interesting to see how this story progresses over the next little while, and to see if Tata eventually does drop out of F1 altogether. But for now, I do think that Tata is going to remain a major marketing partner, and we're going to definitely still be seeing them at the F1 races, even if they are not directly connected to Formula One anymore. The second story of today is that Starbucks has announced their push to open more stores in lower income communities. And I find this story fascinating for a lot of reasons. Number one being, apparently in these lower income communities, the prices are going to be a lot lower on Starbucks items, and also they're going to be offering a lot more jobs to people. So not only do I find the story interesting, I think the story is also just really great. And it does what Starbucks always intends to do with its marketing, is it wants to help people and it wants to empower people. I understand Starbucks is a coffee place. Like, you buy coffee there, you buy very expensive coffee there, but their goals have always been to help and empower people. If you follow them on Instagram, if you follow any of their marketing, you see that so clearly. So getting to see a story from them that by 2025, there will be 85 new stores in rural and urban communities. That is amazing. And each store will hire local staff, including the construction crews and artists, decorators. All of that will be local, which is super cool because then, you can work for Starbucks and you don't just have to be a barista. They're giving people options because I think they realize that maybe being a barista isn't for everyone, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for you at this Starbucks, and that's really what it's about. They're going to have event spaces at the Starbucks, and the company will also work with the local United Way chapters to develop programs at each shop, such as youth job training and mentoring. So again, just a really great story from Starbucks, and really just showing you and showing me and just showing the world that although they sell coffee, that is what they do. And we've talked in the past about how their marketing is always, top tier, and they're always on top of things. They tell us when the seasons change. They tell us when Christmas is over. But that's not all that Starbucks does. And it's interesting that obviously this is part of a marketing tool, but it's a marketing tool that's genuine and has genuine thought behind it. And that's sometimes something that we forget to do because the world can be so black and white. It can be so money in exchange for goods that we forget that we are humans, and that stuff like this really does make the difference in everyday lives, and that it is really important that if you have the type of power and you have the type of platform that Starbucks has, you're using it for something like this. So hats off to you, Starbucks. I think this is really, really great. And John Kelly, who is Starbucks' Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Social Impact, said, "All of these programs are with the intent of being purposeful and profitable. This is not charity. These are successful stores. We're defying a lot of stereotypes, and we are proud to do so." So just amazing and incredible across the board. I'm very interested to see what is going to happen next, how these stores are going to be marketed, and how we are going to be able to follow this story over the next 5 years. The next story of today is that Ben & Jerry's has partnered with Netflix. Okay, guys, so I feel like I talk about this every single episode, but I feel like right now we're all just sort of sitting and waiting to see what Netflix is going to do about Disney Plus. How are they going to fight back? How are they going to challenge their marketing to show that they're the best, to show that they're the number one streaming service, to show that you don't need Disney Plus, you have Netflix. How are they going to do that? And we've already looked at a ton of different ways on other podcast episodes. We've talked about them doing their only cell phone only subscriptions. We've talked about them putting so much more money into their own original content over the next couple of years. But something that's really important to think about is that they're also now outsourcing to other companies to partner with them to hopefully bring that name of Netflix into your everyday life again. So Ben & Jerry's has a new flavor coming out called Netflix and Chill. The flavor is peanut butter ice cream with sweet and salty pretzel swirls and fudge brownie bits. Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing, first of all, but just from a marketing perspective, because this isn't a food podcast, although I mean, if anyone wants to send me these Netflix and chilled Ben & Jerry pints, I'm down. I'll talk about them because I think this is also a really great marketing tool that we should pay attention to, because I think Netflix understands their brand well enough to know that people really like curling up on the couch and binge watching shows, and what's better to binge watch a show than a pint of ice cream. So I think they're really trying to just reinforce their brand and reinforce their brand name so that they become that household name again, the name that people rely on for their entertainment. And Disney Plus will hopefully, I think Netflix will hopefully think Disney Plus won't be as scary as a threat if they can become more important in your household again, if they can become more relevant in your household again. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take our first break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to be talking about how you can make a marketing plan and how you can start collecting the data you need and what type of data you need to start actually making that plan. All of that and more on the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back. And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I am so excited that you have decided to listen to our podcast today. If you haven't already, please subscribe and write a review down below because I absolutely love hearing from you guys, and I want to hear your thoughts on this episode in particular. So on this episode, what we're talking about is how to create a marketing plan that you will be able to hold on to for the year to come, maybe for the years to come, depending on how general you want this plan to be and how specific you want this plan to be. Or you know what, honestly, this plan could just work for one marketing campaign at a time. But basically what we're talking about today is the ways in which you can create a marketing plan that is rock solid. There's always room for improvement. But having a plan and having your content planned out is super helpful and super beneficial to you as a company and as marketers. So the first step in making your marketing plan is collecting data. And I know, guys, I talk about data collection all the time. I'm sick of hearing me talk about it, but it really is so important because I like to think of marketing as like emotions. It's so filled with everybody's emotions, how people feel about a product, how people think they feel about a product. But sometimes emotions get in the way of actually seeing clearly about what a product is. And so data is basically our way as marketers to get rid of the emotions and just look at the cold, hard facts. So why you need to collect data? Well, one, it can help you find new customers. If you're collecting your data and you start to notice that, hey, a lot of people in Seattle click on my ads, maybe then you can start targeting your marketing towards people that live in Seattle. It can increase customer retention. So this is really important too because although, we want to find new customers, keeping the old customers and improving your customer service are both things that are so equally important and can be solved through data. Say your main customers have been not clicking on your ads a lot lately, or they've been clicking and then leaving on a page. You need to collect that data because obviously there's something wrong with those ads and there's something wrong with those web pages that your current client base, they are not responding to, so you need to edit that immediately. It can help you better manage your marketing efforts. So like I'm saying is that if somebody is clicking on an ad, but they're not filling out the lead form, they are not continuing on with the actual ad, then what good is their information? Good is that marketing ad, right? Their information's important, but what good is that actual ad? So it can help you manage your marketing efforts a little bit more because it's going to tell you what your audience wants. So all of those reasons are super important, but really what it comes down to, guys, is this is our proof of what our audience wants, right? We can tell our audience all day what they want, but at the end of the day, the only way to have a conversation with our audience is by looking at their data and saying, oh, our customers really like ads that have birds in them. We should do more ads with birds instead of throwing these like ads that have toasters in them, right? Don't do toasters, do birds. I don't know what kind of business is doing ads that have toasters and birds on it, but hey, maybe your business does, and maybe I just hit you right on the money. You're welcome, but stop running those toaster ads because your business, they clearly want those bird ads, all right? So that's really important when looking at data. The next thing that I want you guys to consider is what type of data you're collecting. So what we're going to be looking for here when we collect our data, and in a minute I'm going to give you some sites to use to collect that data, but what we're looking at is, number one, traffic sources. So there are a bunch of different sources your traffic can be coming from. It can be coming from a paid source, organic search, direct search, social media, or referral. So let's just walk through each of those one at a time. A paid source would be if the traffic is coming to your website from an ad. If they have filled out a lead form or they're on a lead form, they're on the ad and it says, here's our website link, and they're clicking on that. You have paid for people to come to your site. You have advertising dollars in those ads and people are clicking on them and going to your site. So paid, if you're using a lot of money, should always be the number one source because obviously you're putting money into it, so you want people to actually be responding to it. Number 2 is organic. This is people who happen to be sort of looking around the internet and they happen to run into something that is similar to your site and then they click on it and it's not paid, but it's like a post on social media. So they're just sort of finding it organically rather than paid. The next one is direct. They are typing in www.toasterandbirds.com. This one is always going to be small, and you always have to keep in mind, too, that a lot of the direct traffic is probably people at your own company who are searching the web page because they want to make sure everything's okay with it. The next one is social media. So although you can have paid Google ads and all this, your paid Facebook ads are going to come in, and your paid Instagram ads are going to come in through social media, and that's where that number will be tracked. The next one is referral. So this is often through email marketing, that if they are receiving emails from you and they click on it, it is going to go through referral traffic because it looks like it's coming in from a different site. So always make sure you are tracking those numbers because it's going to tell you where to spend your money and how to use your money more generously and more appropriately. The next thing you need to look at is bounce rate. Bounce rate is how long people are staying on your page before leaving. And this is obviously so important because what if people are only staying on your page for 20 seconds? There's something wrong with that website page. What if someone is spending 20 minutes on that page? Something amazing is on that page and we need to capitalize on that. The next thing is conversion rate. So this is going to be different for every single company, but I'm going to use the example of a real estate company because that to me is just the most clear-cut way to explain conversion rate. If you want to sell a house and you put out a Facebook ad, they fill out a lead form. If that lead ends up turning into them buying the house, that is your conversion rate. So it's basically, we can get all the leads we want in the world, but if they're not converting into an actual sale, what good are they? So conversion rates can really help you find the missing link between really great marketing and really bad sales, or vice versa. The next thing we're going to be looking for is user demographics. So user demographic is going to tell you if more women than men look at your ads, if more females under the age of 20 are on your website, if more males over the age of 50 are on your social media. It's going to tell you all of that and more. They're going to get more specific than just sex and age. But the good thing about that is that if you can understand your demographic, you understand your audience. And it can also help you find a new audience. Say suddenly you put out these ads about toasters and a whole bunch of men over 50 who all love watching the James Bond movies start clicking on your ads. User demographic is going to give you that information so that you can start targeting your ads towards that specific demographic instead of your other demographics. Okay, so there's a few sites that you can use that will help you track your data and will help you understand your data a little bit more. On every podcast, I talk about Sprout Social, so I'm not going to talk about Sprout Social on this one. Instead, I'm going to talk about Optimizely. Optimizely was one that I used when I worked back in Canada for a radio station, and it was really great because if you typed in a social media post, it would tell you how to change. It was sort of like Grammarly. It would tell you if there's weak language in there, uncertain language, spelling mistakes. But more than that, it would tell you what is the best time to send out that social media post. So all of those features are great, but more importantly, it tells you all of the statistics that I just talked about you're looking for. It's going to give you all of those. The other ones are Moz, CMrush, and Lucky Orange. All of those are going to give you the stats and more stats that we just talked about that you're looking for. These sites are all really great and really sleek and have a lot of ton features, so I definitely recommend you go poke around in there if you're looking for a new site to test out your social media analytics. If you're just looking for a free site, use Google Analytics, use Facebook Insights, and just sort of poke around in there because all of those numbers I talked about, they can be found for free. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take another break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to be talking about how you can brainstorm and create your actual marketing plan. So stay tuned for that because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. Before the break, we were talking about data analytics and what type of data you need to create an effective marketing plan. So the type of data that you're going to be looking for is traffic sources, bounce rate, conversion rate, user demographics. So once you have all of that data, put it in front of you because the next step in creating a marketing plan is the brainstorming and the creation of the plan. So what that is it's the actual fun part. And that makes sense that it comes right after data analytics because data analytics can be kind of boring and not so much fun as it is just a lot of work. Whereas the brainstorming and the creation of your plan is a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun work. And yes, you're going to be drained after, but you're going to feel like you accomplished something because you're going to be able to hold your plan or see your plan in front of you. And you're going to be able to be like, look at what I created and look at what I'm going to get to create with this plan in the future. So the first step in this really is brainstorming. So there are a few sites that I find super useful when it comes to brainstorming, and those are Pexel and Unsplash, PicMonkey, Hotstock, and Pinterest. The reason that all of those are sort of more images and fun graphic stuff is because that's really what gets the brainstorming juices going. Your first step in creating your marketing plan is having an idea of what your marketing is going to be. And maybe that'll be a quote you find on Pinterest. Maybe that'll be a photo you find on PicMonkey. Maybe it'll be a aesthetically pleasing setup that you find on Hotstock. All of those options are totally up to you. And I know it's going to sound like a totally lame thing to do, but basically what I want you to do is collect images in the same way you would collect images if you were a 17-year-old girl making a vision board. I want you to collect images that inspire your marketing, that make you want to actually create things at the same level of that, and that make you feel like you've got a handle on your marketing this year, that you know what direction you want to push yourself in, and these photos remind you of that. So once you have all those photos, you're going to put them in front of you with your data, and you're going to say, okay, well, our main demographic based on our user demographic are all women. So let's take out all photos that include men. Okay. Now the next thing is that our bounce rate shows that it's really, really low for people who are on our site for only 5 minutes, and all those people are under 20. So let's take out photos of young people because they're not staying on our site for very long. Our conversion rate shows that it's really high in women that have kids and work during the day. So maybe you have images of like boss babes who are moms by the day. Maybe you have some Rachel Hollis photos up there because she works and has a full-time mom. You know, you got photos of Murphy Brown on there, if any of you guys are fans of that show when it was on in the 80s. Tons of different options to really inspire and start brainstorming and get those juices flowing, because the next step isn't something I can recommend a site for. It's not something I can recommend a way to do it. You just need to brainstorm. And everybody has a different way to do this. Get the whiteboard out, get the notebook out, get your computer out, get the iPad out, and just write out all of your ideas so that they're in front of you, and you'll know which ones work and you'll know which ones you want to aim for based on your data analytics. So once you have all of those ideas in front of you, what I want you to do now is turn them into a plan. So what ideas are going to take a full year to make? Put those in a timeline. What marketing plans are only going to take a month to execute? Put those on the timeline. What plans could we execute today and would be successful within the hour? Put those on a timeline. Put those on a timeline. Put those on a timeline. Once they're on the timeline, it's going to be so much easier to make your actual plan and the actual creation of your plan. Because then you can say, okay, well, if this one is going to take a full year to make, then once a week we're going to check in on this marketing initiative to make sure that we are on track so that in 1 year we can hit send and it's going to be released. If this one is going to take a full month, we are going to check in on it every day, but only for an hour to make sure that we are on track. Up until a week before it is supposed to be released, in which we will spend the entire week making sure everything is perfect. There are a lot of different formats that you can use to really create a plan. Some people use a calendar, some people use Trello, some people use Slack, although I would never recommend using Slack because Slack consistently changes and is always moving around and new information is always coming in. You want something stable. And something that I really like using, although it's not going to sound super techy or super innovative, get an Excel spreadsheet into the mix. Put at the top the dates, put along the corners, all of the Facebook billboards, brochures, all that stuff on there so that you're able to go look at it and it's organized. It is always saved in one place. You're able to make changes to it and it's just super sleek and super easy to use. So highly recommend Excel spreadsheets. If you're looking for a more physical, tangible copy, write it out. From October to November, here are the marketing plans we have. From December to February, here are the marketing plans we have. And just write it out. Use those Pinterest images we gathered earlier and make your plan as beautiful or as simple as you want. Once you have your plan created, I want you to go for a walk for 1 hour. Go get a coffee. Go get a coffee from Starbucks, because I'm kind of in love with Starbucks now after hearing that story earlier in the podcast. Because you've just put in, this plan might take you a couple days to make, guys, but it might not be perfect. So what you're going to do is you're going to create your plan, and then you're going to take a break from it. You're going to go take a walk. And then when you come back, what you're going to do is you're going to test your plan. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So we're going to take a break from the podcast because I'm assuming that maybe you're listening to this while you're creating your plan. And what I want you to do instead is take a break, take a walk around. I'm going to take a break as well. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how you can test your plan and how you can correct the mistakes you may have made. So stay tuned because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquesh, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today's podcast is a lot of fun because we are talking about marketing plans. Now, on almost every podcast, I talk about how important a marketing plan is, but I don't think I've ever actually taught you guys how to create one. So that's what today's episode has really been about. We have talked about creating your data analytics, gathering those, and ensuring that you understand them enough to really put them into action when it comes to your plan. And then we talked about the brainstorming and the actual creation of your plan. And I recommended that everyone goes outside right now or just goes to their local Starbucks, gets a coffee, and then comes back after creating your plan, because you're going to want a bit of a mental break in between creating your plan and testing your plan. A really good example is that at the end of every one of these podcasts, I take a break before I edit it. I record, I take a break, I edit, I take a break, I listen. That way, I'm not so emotionally attached to the project that I can't look at it critically, because that's what we're going to do next with the testing and correcting section. So the testing and correction section of your plan is really going to be, you're going to want to take a critical look at everything. I want you to get your data out, and I want you to have this all printed out in front of you, or open 2 tabs up on your computer, or have 2 laptops sitting beside each other, because you're going to want to compare and contrast. Okay, let's take a look at our demographics. Do our demographics in the marketing plan we have proposed match our data? Our data shows that all of our demographic comes from kids under the age of 18. Are we marketing to them? Or are we marketing to their parents because they're the ones who are actually buying the stuff? These are the types of questions you actually need to ask yourself to ensure that all of your marketing efforts aren't going to go to waste, because you're actually taking a look at your data and making sure that everything is in line for your marketing. The next thing you need to look at is our marketing plan realistic? Have the timelines we've set up actually going to work? We have said that starting Monday morning, we are going to post a new photo on Instagram every single day. Do you have those posts ready to go? Do you have somebody in charge of creating those posts? Are they all spell checked? All the images ready to go? Are they in Hootsuite ready to go out? If not, and you're planning on starting them Monday morning, you need to start creating them right now. Stop listening to this podcast and go create those posts, because you said they're going out Monday morning. You need to be realistic about the amount of time you have between now and when you want these projects to start. The second thing you need to look at is your budget. We are planning to make X amount of dollars from these ads so that we will be able to do Project B. Project B is very expensive, but we are going to use the money from these ads to create this project. What if those ads don't work? Is Project B so important to your company that if you don't do it, your company is going to fall apart? The marketing is going to fall apart. If it is, then you need a plan B in case your ads don't work, because they might not. So what I want you to take a look at when it comes to your budget is, how much money do I have to be spending on marketing, and how much of what I have planned is a risk versus I know this will make money. And you will know it will make money based on your data analytics. That's what those are there for. This ad made a lot of money in the past. It will make money again in the future. This ad has never been run before, but I took a look at my data analytics, and it has similar demographic aiming and demographic targeting. So I am confident that it will make money. The next thing you need to look at is who is in charge of what in your marketing plan. So while we're going through our marketing plan here, we've made sure that there's dates, we've made sure that there's timelines, and we've made sure of the budget. But now we need to make sure that people know what they're in charge of. Color coding can be a really great way to ensure that people know when their projects are due versus when your projects are due, when you're going to be taking a look at their projects, when they're going to be taking a look at your projects. So make sure you're really strict about color coding and how you want things to look on your actual plan. And if you don't want to color code, say that you're colorblind, then make sure maybe you bold names, or you have different copies for everybody detailing who is in charge of what. Either way, communication is so important that it needs to be a part of your plan. You need to show within the plan who is in charge of what. That way, if anything falls through, you can take a look at the plan and say, okay, well, George was in charge of that, but George got hit by an ice cream truck, so we are going to take his responsibilities and pass them over to Mel. Mel is able to go into that document and see everything that George was supposed to do that week, and she can take over. Obviously, that is a very dark scenario, and I hope, George, if you're listening, you're okay. I don't know any Georges, but if I do, I'm sorry. If any of you are listening and your name is George, I'm very, very sorry. But what I'm trying to get at is that the plan needs to work for every member of your team. So when you're reviewing your plan to make sure it works, make sure you review those things with your actual team. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to fully test your plan. Now, this is going to be something that will actually take a week. So obviously, like I said, a lot of your plan may take a year to do. It might take a few months. But what I need you to do is weekly report. What I need you to do is do weekly reports on your marketing plan. This way, if something is going wrong, you can stop it immediately rather than being like, well, shoot, those ads didn't make any money. How are we going to afford to do project B? You're going to know within the first week if those ads aren't making money. And then you'll give them another week to try, but if they're not working by then, get rid of them and try something new. Your plan is important to follow, but it is not so important that you have to stick with it. You are not the captain of the Titanic. You do not need to go down with the ship. You are able to steer out of that iceberg, and you are able to make changes to this plan. So you can use all of your data analytics, those sites that I gave you earlier, to make sure that you are weekly reporting. Again, I say it in every podcast, but Sprout Social really does give you really great reports. So make sure you check out those. And yeah, just make sure you're weekly reporting on all of the statistics I already gave you, because those are super important in ensuring that you're staying on top of your marketing and staying on top of your demographics. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, I'm going to give you the top 5 resources that I really love to use when it comes to creating a marketing plan. So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the GSMC Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the GSMC Financial News Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Before the break, we were talking about all the ways that you can make an iron-clad marketing plan and all the things that you need to consider when creating your marketing plan for the future and how you can test and correct your plan as needed. So now that we're back from the break, I'm going to give you the top 5 resources that I love to use when creating my marketing plan. The first one is Optimizely. Optimizely is really great because it's going to give you all of the information that I talked about earlier that you need. It is going to give you your bounce rate. It is going to give you your demographics. But above all else, it can also be used as a CMS, which is a content management system. So you will be able to keep your social media posts on there. You'll be able to keep your marketing plan on there. And it's just a really great way to keep all of the information together so that you're able to go in there at a one-stop shop, see everything that you need to see. The next one, we didn't really talk a lot in this episode, but I want to do a whole episode on it, is SurveyMonkey. The best way to get data from your actual audience is to ask your actual audience. We can take a look at demographics and we can take a look at all the data that those are giving us. But at the end of the day, ask your audience. If you're loyal, If you have loyal customers who you know will give you an honest answer, send them a Survey Monkey. Make it part of an email campaign. Say, win a $5 gift card to Starbucks. If you fill out this Survey Monkey, you'll be entered to win. This way you get some honest answers because it's anonymous and people aren't going to care enough to lie. So definitely try on Survey Monkey to get an honest answer out of your audience so that you can target your marketing better. The third one is Pinterest. So Pinterest is really great for brainstorming and getting some marketing inspiration. I really enjoy using it because, oh gosh, there's just everything on there. There is everything from how to market birds to how to market prom dresses. So it's definitely just a great way to see some beautiful imagery and get inspired to do some really great and beautiful marketing. The next one is Excel spreadsheets. So for me, the best way to create a marketing plan really is with Excel spreadsheets. It's so great. They're so easy to change. They're so easy to move around. Everyone understands them and they're just clear and concise and really just is a very sleek way to show information. The next one is Sprout Social, because if you need to test your work, Sprout Social is the best way to do that because it just gives you the information and it comes out in a beautiful report. So definitely check out any of those 5 sites if you're looking for ways to create your marketing plan. Okay, everyone. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.